Welcome on into another edition of the Wolverine podcast. It is Thursday, July 18th, 2024. As it stands now, I believe we have 44 days until Michigan football kicks off the 2024 season. Anthony Broom here, along with Chris Ballas, Clayton Safey off this week. And Chris, I mean, in a lot of ways, this feels like, I won't say the last week of summer, but we're in it next week. We go to Indy for Big Ten Media Days. We've got an exciting event that we'll announce here in a few minutes. But once we go to Indy, it's always sort of like the first day of school, so to speak. We're all sitting in the media line with our backpacks on, and we just had our donut or our muffin at the hotel. And it's kind of, like I said, it's the unofficial start to the year. So, of course, fall camp will start on July 31st. We start next week. Chris, welcome back. How's the summer been? I guess.
Amazing, man. It's been nice to relax a little bit. First off, loving the playoff beard. All right, it's a great look. So
yeah,
that's awesome. And now, we're going to be right there trying to fight over quotes that everybody gets. Right? It's not like you can get. Used to be able to sit at tables, and when people would disperse to other tables, you'd have a chance for maybe a one-on-one with a coach or a player. Those days are long gone. Now everybody's fighting over, what am I going to write and what's the angle going to be on these quotes? And you're going to have some guys manipulating them, and not us, obviously, but it's always fun. At the same time, it gets earlier and earlier. So we still have, 5 weeks before football starts once we go to Big Ten Media Day. So it'll be fun. I'm looking forward to it, especially with the 3-day format now and with so many more teams. There are going to be so many different angles with the Big Ten teams coming in from out west. So looking forward to it, though.
Yeah, we will talk about just a quick little Big Ten Media Days preview here in a little bit. We'll talk about Sharon Moore, Makari Page, Donovan Edwards, Max Bredesen as Michigan's representatives. And I want to pick your brain a little bit on some of the best non-Michigan storylines before we hit Indianapolis. But before we do all that, I want to let you guys know we are brought to you today by ourselves over at the WolverineOnDemand.com. Our football preview is out in the wild. It's outstanding. I've been saying it for weeks. I think it's maybe my favorite cover that the Wolverines ever done. Just nothing but blue skies ahead, smiles on the front cover. Of course, you could also bundle that by picking up your edition of our National Championship magazine as well. Both still available on our website. Get that Michigan football preview. Over 160 pages of full positional breakdown. Some great stuff in there from Ballas, John Morton, Clayton Safey, Drew Hallett, myself, the recruiting guys. Just it's a total team effort, and I could not be more over the moon about how that turned out. So head on over to the WolverineOnDemand.com, get your copy of that today, and get going on the reading. We've only got 44 days left. It's like studying for an exam. You got a lot of cramming to do over these next several weeks. We are also brought to you by ourselves in that over at the Wolverine.com, you can use the promo code UM1 for 2 months of access to the website for only $1. That's promo code UM1. That gets you onto the message board. It gets you EJ's recruiting intel, takes you inside the fort with Chris, Clayton, myself, all the stuff behind the scenes. So take advantage of the offer that Clayton says is the best offer in America. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of our show, excuse me, I wanted to take this opportunity to, you may have seen it on social media, but for those of you who didn't, we have a really cool event coming up next week. It is the Champion Circle Golf Classic at the U of M golf course. Chris, Clayton, and myself will be live streaming from there starting at 8 a.m. Sharon Moore will be stopping by. We'll have the coordinator stopping through, Michigan players stopping through. I'm so looking forward to this. We haven't really done something like this before. It's going to be this is going to be a lot of fun. And Chris, I think we asked fun to ask some of these guys before media days about how things are looking and a little more of a deep dive on that front. But kind of want to know how these guys swing them too.
Yeah, exactly. And it's fun because these are the times when we get these guys alone and we can ask the questions that we want to ask and get their direct answers. And we're supposed to get quite a few of them. So like I said, in Indianapolis, how many questions do you have, A, for Max Bredesen, and B, how excited are people going to be? And I'll be honest, I love Max Bredesen. I think he's going to be a huge part of this team, but you know what? People are going to say that's not the sexiest interview out there. So we're going to get a lot of guys here in addition to the 3 guys that we're getting in Indianapolis. So should be a great time.
Yeah, we'll have more details on the lineup, times that people will be on, but It's going to be great. We're really looking forward to it. So hopefully you guys will tune in. It will be live on our YouTube channel, and we will have interviews and such clipped on the website afterwards. But yeah, it's to benefit Michigan's NIL as well. Encourage you guys to get involved, and I know they're going to be launching some campaign stuff ahead of that event. So keep your eyes peeled on that. We'll be live Tuesday at 8 a.m. Eastern time. All right, before we talk about Big Ten Media Days, given that this is sort of the unofficial, I won't say end of the summer, August, there's still opportunities for that, but it's kind of the unofficial end of the offseason. And I think in some ways for Michigan this offseason, it's been fairly quiet. In other ways, the winds of change have been blowing in terms of NIL, in terms of certainly things have been amped up on the recruiting trail. So, Chris, I mean, before we talk about Indianapolis, what are some of your biggest takeaways from what we learned about this team this offseason? And I don't know if there's much that's changed since the end of spring ball other than the guys that they brought in via the transfer portal. But now that we can kind of take a step back, have a full picture of what this roster looks like, what do you make of Sherrod Moore's first offseason on the job?
Yeah, really busy on the recruiting trail as we knew he would be. He said he was going to be taking the lead with a lot of these recruits, and we've seen that, and I love that. We really won't know, obviously, until his first year and maybe beyond that. Remember what happened with Juwan Howard and how he came in and, he felt his way out a little bit, and then year two had a great year in the COVID year. So the results are really going to be on the field and what he does going forward. A lot of people are going to say that he inherited Jim Harbaugh's program and his team, and I think that's fair. At the same time, Sherrod Moore was a big part of that. So, and I think he kept the culture intact as much as he could. He's going to put his own twist on some things clearly, but at the same time, this guy is his own man. So, and all the kids say it too. They are very excited to see what he does with these guys and with this team, and how he goes about with the offense and what he does. So we'll see. But everything he's done so far has impressed me.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing for him, I mean, you can only hit so many benchmarks when you haven't been in the big chair before. But when you look at the conviction in which he's acted in terms of filling out his coaching staff, I mean, really from the spring game felt as familiar as it ever has. The competition was good. I thought the depth through several units of the team were good. There were some things he had to handle with Greg Scruggs and Denard Robinson, and I felt like he acted pretty quickly on the front on those fronts there. And for a guy that was kind of drinking out of the fire hose, so to speak, we talked to him at Wayne State about a month and a half ago at this point. And just kind of finally feels at ease, and it doesn't feel like it's too much for him to handle. Now, the biggest part of the job is going to come when they do play these games. But when you look at operationally, I think everything pretty much looks and feels the same. I think from a roster perspective, I know in the transfer portal, everyone was kind of hoping that they'd go out and land QB1 and they'd go get a star wide receiver, but they address their needs. I think in the secondary now, with some of the losses that they've had, and obviously the injury to Rod Moore, I think that is one of the strengths of your team now, given the additions that they made. So just a really, really well-rounded offseason. And like I said, it feels like, for a while it felt like a couple steps back, which there was always going to be a drop-off for Jim Harbaugh, from Jim Harbaugh, I should say. But it feels like things are on the up and up, and this program has momentum heading into the most critical part of his first year yet.
And a lot of it, the judging is going to come on how that quarterback performs, right? If, for example, the quarterback is the one thing holding this team back from being a contender or from being a playoff team, then you're going to have a lot of people saying, why didn't you get your quarterback in the portal? And I that won't be unfair, because we were wondering the same thing. And part of it, JJ McCarthy didn't decide until later on. It was going to be tough until it was clear that JJ was moving on, that, okay, we need a quarterback. But they seem to think that they've got the guy in the room, and they've said multiple times, we've got several D1 starters on our roster. Jack Tuttle, we've heard good things about in terms of summer ball, and which really doesn't mean a whole lot. It does mean that accuracy in 7-on-7s is important, and he's more accurate than Alex Orji at this point. Alex Orji still has several weeks, and he talked to you with a great interview, I thought, Anthony, about what he was working toward to be that starting quarterback. But to me, that's what it's all going to come down to. They've got pieces everywhere else. If you look at the offensive line, 4 stars, 5 stars even, defensive line, best in the country. You look at the depth on defense. outstanding. I think that offensive line is going to be very good. Wide receivers, you've got 4 stars across the board, right? And so to me, that's what it's going to come down to, Kirk Campbell and the way they use these guys. If you are going to go with Alex Orji, then you better have an offense tailored to him and not trying to make it a Denard Robinson in a passing offense type of deal again, right? Like we saw several years ago. So, but there's plenty of talent here to in my opinion, and plenty of pride in this program. These guys want to repeat, and they believe they can. And speaking with many of them in the offseason, look at Donovan Edwards, for example. You've got a loaded running back room. So to me, it's going to come down to that. And, there are going to be some critics. If he loses more than 3 games, I think everybody's saying kind of set the bar, Anthony, at 9-3 and said, okay, below that, going to be disappointed in you. Above that, this thing, boy, we're going to give you all your props. But 9-3 to me is what you really have to achieve in year one to keep from taking a step back.
Yeah, 9-3 feels right. I think depending on the sports book you look at right now, I think most have them at 9 or 9.5. And football preview, spoiler alert, I said 10-2. I think they'll win that Texas game. But yeah, I think that when it comes to reestablishing yourself as a program that's going to be in the conversation. Now, what in the conversation is different now because there is no Big Ten championship game. There is a 12-team college football playoff. And I think that's good. I mean, that was a special group last year. And that's not – we probably won't ever see a team that loaded, that talented, and that able to go undefeated again. I mean, it's just the fact of the matter is the math is against them in that regard. So to reestablish on that front again, I think that if you summed up the offseason as kind of reestablishing what they are, what their identity is going to be, I think that'd probably be a good way to put it. So let's move to Big Ten Media Days now. Jerome Moore's going to take the podium Thursday morning, and then we'll get the scrum with him on Thursday afternoon. Chris Ballas, I mean, as you prepare, as you kind of get yourself in the headspace for what our coverage at this event will look like, what is the one thing that you want to know from Sherrod Moore? Maybe the biggest burning question that you have right now?
Yeah, and he's not going to answer it. So if we're going to be honest, remember when we talked to him a month ago, we asked him, he said, I'm not talking about the quarterbacks. And that's what everybody's going to ask about. And he's going to say the same thing. We're going to go into camp and we're going to see who does best and so on and so forth. And but I would imagine it's going to be some sort of a platoon in the opener, Anthony, and he won't tell us that. But I do want to know, I guess we can ask the questions that he can answer. And it's like, how's the offseason gone in terms of weight gains and guys being where they're supposed to be and everything else. And that's what he'll be able to answer for us. But there's not going to be a whole lot much different than what we learned in the spring from him. And because he hasn't seen anything. Right. And so he can tell us what went on in the weight room. And I'll remember one year when Lloyd Carr was there and I asked him about Gabe Watson. Gabe Watson being a big defensive tackle. This is probably 20 years ago already. Now it's crazy. Who had all the talent in the world, but was he going to do what he needed to do over the summer, Anthony, to put himself in position to be a dominant tackle? And Lloyd kind of looked at me when I asked. He goes, "We'll see." And I'm like, okay, that was my answer right there. He hadn't done what he needed to do, and he never really did. Still a good player, but could have been a dominant player and never was. But I think Sharon keeps it a little bit more close to the vest. So some of the questions, this is basically one of those things more for the fans than the media. We're going to get a lot of quotes that don't mean a whole lot unless somebody goes off the rails and says something they weren't supposed to, or says it gives some bulletin board material. And you can be damn sure that the Ohio guys will be trying that with the Michigan players, because they always do. There's always that one or two guys there, asking about Michigan, Ohio State, and so on and so forth. So, but other than that, Anthony, it's going to be pretty vanilla, but it'll be fun because we get a chance to. This really kind of, like I said, kicks off the season for us.
Yeah, for those of you watching the video version, the Big Ten Media Day schedule is up. Michigan is on day 3 with Indiana, Maryland, Minnesota, Oregon, and Washington. And to me, it's going to be a lot to come out of that day, just because your national championship game foe is a conference opponent now. I know the Ohio State game is always going to be circled as the biggest, but arguably your second biggest opponent of the year in Oregon is going to be there that same day. So it's going to be exciting. I will be interested to see how much of the Buckeye contingent does remain now that it is a 3-day event. But then again, the one bulletin board question probably will pay their hotel rate for the entire trip. So I'd imagine we'll see them on Thursday. So Michigan has 3 players that they will bring there.
Donovan Edwards, who I feel like I've seen him more than close family members this summer. He's been at NIL events and doing his own camps and things like that everywhere, kind of has become the de facto face of this organization now that he's been on, he's on the cover of College Football 25. He's in the marketing for that. He's doing NIL events. He's everywhere. And I think he has kind of relished that role. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and ask, like, at this point, all of the storylines with Donovan have been well plowed at this point. But when you look at him going into this season, do you see him as running back 1, or is he 1A and 1B with Khalil Mullings? Is it a 3-headed monster if like a Jordan Marshall comes in and lights it up? So when you look at, just Donovan Edwards in particular, listen, the flash has been outstanding, but to me, a guy that needs to learn to hit more singles and doubles.
Yep, 100%. Can't be all or nothing all the time. Otherwise, you're going to be in tons of 3rd and longs, right? And there's no J.J. McCarthy to bail you out like he did last year against Michigan State. Looking back at that game, I watched that again the other night, Anthony, and it was J.J. McCarthy, 3rd and 14, first down. J.J. McCarthy, 3rd and 11, touchdown. So it was one thing after another. If Alex Orji has to do that, I don't think you're doing it. I think you're punting a lot. So to me, you're right. 2 things about him. He gets tripped up a little bit easily at times, and he has to be that guy that can break that tackle like Blake Corum learned to do, keep the chains moving, get those couple extra yards, and do a better job with his vision. Even his first touchdown in the Washington game, he ran right into the back of a lineman, then he busted out of there for his touchdown. The second one was much better, but it's the vision and the patience that we need to see from him to prove that he's an every down back, and I think he can be. It's late in his career, but we've seen guys at and let's not pretend that Donovan Edwards hasn't already had a very good career here, right? With Blake Corum as the second back, but it's a different animal when you're trying to be that first back, and it'll be interesting to see how they use him too. Will they use more of Mullings and Edwards on the field at the same time with Donovan as a pass catcher? I think that would be a big weapon for them. So, but that is the question mark. And can he keep those legs moving? He looks bigger, clearly. He looks ready and anxious for the part. And what a great kid, man. This guy has always been happy. Every time we've talked to him, he has never complained. He has always been nothing but great with us. So hoping that he has the kind of season that everybody expects. And hey, hoping that we get to see him throw it too every now and then, like we're seeing in the picture right here now.
Let me ask you this. You need a big throw to be made in a big game. Do you trust Alex Orji or do you trust Donovan Edwards?
That's a fair question. If it's not predictable, right? But there will be times, I bet you'll see Donovan throw a couple passes this year. So it's a fair question. And that's the big question mark about Alex Orji, right? Is can he find those guys downfield? And you cannot turn the ball over. And I think you're going to be seeing them play it even more close to the vest than they have the last few years, because they're going to play to their defense. That's their strength. There's no question about it. This defense is the strength of this team. And if you're going to be playing complementary football, then you're going to have to trust those guys and not put them in bad positions. And that means not giving the ball to the opponent on your side of the field. So that's why I'm so interested to see what the game plan is going to be. And even in week 1 against Fresno State without Jeff Tedford, which is crazy. Already we got a curveball here early in the before the season even starts. So, but to me, that's what we're going to be watching. And love Donovan Edwards, though. I love Alex Orji's potential. I would love to see him put it all together, because Anthony, let me ask you this. Boy, there aren't very many better interviews that you've done, I bet, than what you just saw from Alex Orji.
No, every time. I think this was the second time we've talked to him, if you don't count the spring game.
Yeah.
And yeah, he carries himself extremely well. And, with him, he's not a guy like, there are really 2 scenarios here. He's either going to be the starter, or he's going to come in and be kind of the platoon change of pace guy, like the JJ was back in 21. And, I had asked him, knowing that you probably have a role regardless, does that take pressure off of you? And he says, no, it does not. Like, he knows what the standard is. I think he's doing everything he can to try and emulate JJ McCarthy, which, again, easier said than done. I think history, people are going to look at the stats that JJ put up and be like, yeah, he was all right. He's pretty good. But just from a like charisma standpoint, from a gravitas standpoint, from a steps up and a gotta have it moment situation standpoint, these are enormous shoes to fill. And one of the knocks on JJ coming out of college and heading to the NFL was that he was just kind of boring. He was just sort of, the stats weren't great, didn't do a ton to jump off the page, but you're going to learn, I think, pretty quickly, regardless of who the quarterback is, just how good he was, because he made the simple things look so easy, and they are not easy in college football, executing that. So, but at least he's got it between the ears. I think if they need to put the ball in his hands and make something happen, I don't think that moment is going to be too big for him. It's just a matter of, are you on time? Are your mechanics sound? Do you make the right reads? Do you get the ball out quick enough? Again, I think that so much of what Michigan was offensively last year, really the last few years, it's, listen, they're just going to come right at you. Like, they are what they are. They just execute at an extremely high level. And they're going to lose a bit of that element. But when you look at, and this is, again, I'm not going to go too deep into the video game, because I feel like talking about the video game is akin to people talking about how good their fantasy football team is. When you kind of just in a virtual setting, see the type of players that they have. And then you go back and, you watch what Michigan's game plan was in the Rose Bowl last year, where there's the crossing routes, there's the pre-snap motion. This is really going to test the creativity consistently of Sharon Moore and Kirk Campbell. And I think it's more than just, I'm most interested in just how creatively this looks heading into the season.
Yeah. Are they going to use Alex Orji? Are you going to use more read option with him, for example? I think that would play to his strengths. And if you're going to run him a lot, it can't just be wildcat and you're just doing this and you're just doing that and run straight runs with him, because everybody's going to be loading the box. Right. So, but I trust Kirk Campbell and I trust Sharon Moore more than anything to put them in positions to move the ball. And these are the guys that they decided, hey, these are our quarterbacks, right? If it's Jack Tuttle, I think they'll throw more. I think Jack Tuttle gets a bad rap that everybody says, oh, he was terrible at Indiana. Well, he had a terrible supporting cast, number one. Number two, then he was backing up Michael Penix, and then he was backing up J.J. McCarthy. So, but to me, Kirk Campbell is a workaholic. He's a guy that's going to be in that lab every day, designing plays and designing an offense that plays to his strengths. And that makes me feel much better about the direction of the program and the offense going into the end of the year.
Yeah, I think when it comes to, I think that's maybe the biggest area that Michigan can kind of make their mark and establish an identity. I don't think they're going to be as clinical as they were under Jim Harbaugh. And to a certain extent, you kind of saw that when he wasn't on the sideline last year. Now, there were extenuating circumstances for that, given that the weeks leading up to those games down the stretch were kind of crazy. But just because you're not clinical doesn't mean you can't still be hard to defend.
Right.
I think this offense has the ability to be very hard to defend, despite, this, I won't even call it a talent deficit, just the questions that they have at each of those positions. Max Bredesen, Makari Page will also be at Big Ten Media Days. No disrespect to either guy. I am going to enjoy talking to Max Bredesen. We did an interview with him during spring ball, and he's going to be one of those mentality setting guys. Makari Page, kind of a quiet guy, doesn't say a ton. Don't know that we're going to get any state secrets out of him, but are there any storylines with either of those two players that you might look to address next week?
Yeah, just about the replacing of Rod Moore, right? Because this is a guy who was going to be the quarterback of the defense, and now they're asking Makari Page to be that guy. And it's going to be tough. There's no question about it. It's really not in his nature to be the guy who talks a lot and to be the guy that's directing traffic back there. But now they need him to be. So he's going to have to step up. And without Rod Moore back there, that's his role now. I also want to hear what he thinks about the other safety spot. And, these guys, they're going to mention everybody, right? Even from the starters, potential starters to walk-ons. I want to get the Michigan State angle with Mangum and how he has adapted into that room, because that is unique. That is extremely unique when you get somebody to defect from your rival. We saw it with Justin Boren going to Ohio State, Joey Velasquez this year. A lot of people still don't know that Joey Velasquez, former linebacker and baseball player, is now at Ohio State. So, but it'll be interesting to see how that's going. And then I want to hear about the corners, and we'll ask them about Amir Hall and Jair Hill and what we've seen back there. But as far as Makari goes, he's been here forever. It's like you said, he's not going to say a whole lot. Quiet kid, but those will be the talking points that I ask him about.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to add on that. I think that's probably the best angle with him. Max Bredesen, I just want to know, like, is it going to be a little more tight end? Is there going to be a little more, you see him a little more involved in the passing game? I think that's within the range of outcomes as well. So, yeah, don't have a lot more to add from Michigan perspective. I think where we kind of want to wrap things up here today is the best, or maybe a few of the best non-Michigan storylines there. Obviously, Monday or Tuesday, we will not be there because we'll be doing the aforementioned event. But that Ryan Day, the Ohio State Buckeyes, they have coming off fresh off their offseason championship, which hopefully they get plenty of congratulations for that when they're in Indianapolis. But the Buckeyes are going to get badgered, so to speak. Like I said, I've already kind of laid out the storylines with Washington and Oregon on the day that Michigan's there. But does anything stand out to you about what the other teams have going on? That is something we'll maybe pull on there.
Yeah, I'm interested to hear what Ryan Day has to say about his loaded team. I would ask him. I think it was Urban Meyer that said this is the most talented team in Ohio State history, and maybe the most talented team in college football, and so on and so forth. And hear his response to that, because basically he put him right there on the spot, didn't he? Saying, you better win this year, you better win the game, and you better take care of business because we bought you this fantastic team, and it's time for you to beat Michigan, and it's time for you to get back to the playoff and to win a championship. So that's basically what I'll ask him. I don't think John Smith at Michigan State is going to be one of those guys like Mark D'Antonio that is filled with hatred and vitriol for his rivals. And so I think it's going to be kind of vanilla from him, but I'm still interested to hear what he has to say about his team. I remember being there one year, AB, when Nick Saban was the coach at Michigan State, and he was so blunt. He's like, on defense, we have no talent. On the defensive line, we really have no talent, So I wouldn't expect John Smith to say that, although it wouldn't stun me if he feels that way, because they've got a cupboard to restock there. So, and beyond that, I'm guessing the Indiana coach is going to come out and firing and saying, we aren't afraid of anybody, and so on and so forth, before he gets his ass kicked in half of his games this year. So
I win. Google me.
Exactly. I win. Google me. Exactly. So, but I am glad that we get to see the Washington and Oregon contingent there as well on Thursday, and we get the two teams on Wednesday. I think it'll be fascinating to hear their points of view on the amount of travel they're going to have to do and coming to play out here. It's going to be tough for them. It's tough going both ways, Anthony, when you are going out west and when you're coming back to the east to play for these teams. Time changes and everything else. There's a reason that Michigan has won one true Pac-12 road game, Pac-10 road game, basically since I've been watching Michigan football at UCLA in 1989, and they needed an onside kick to get it. Doesn't matter how hard the opponent is, it's always going to be a tough game. So Washington, I'm anxious to hear what Jed Fish has to say about his first team, because that's going to be Michigan's first road test, and it's going to be a tough one out there. I don't have any question. They've got some talent there, and Jed Fish will have something up his sleeve for them.
Yeah, it's a good point on Jed. I keep forgetting that he's out there now. So Jed Fish, that'll be a good angle to hit on. Dan Lanning at Oregon. I feel like he's just a guy that, even as a younger guy, like, he brings Oregon into this conference with just like they have this presence about them. And they're, again, I know all the love has been on Ohio State, but when you look at teams in this conference that have the talent in the trenches on both sides of the ball, the proven quarterback situation, the talent that Phil Knight is just emptying the bag at this point, because I think he wants to see a national title before the Lord calls his name, so to speak.
He's Mike Illiching.
Yeah. And you know what? Hey, what's that feel like? I have no idea. It's been years at this point. So I'm interested in talking to Dan Lanning, hearing what he has to say. Again, I think if they got into the playoff last year, they might have won the whole damn thing. Yeah. So to me, I think that, this pecking order that will start to sort itself out starting really it starts when Michigan plays USC, but October 12th, Ohio State goes to Oregon. Talk about the cross country trip, and we know how those Buckeyes have handled pressure. And that atmosphere is going to be incredible out there. So yeah, I think that pretty much hits on it from the conference perspective. Any other lingering thoughts before we sort of wrap up here?
Let's not wish the summer away still. It'll be fun. We'll have plenty to write about. And when camp starts, that'll be the same as well. So, but enjoy these last several weeks. The grind is about to get real again, man. So, and it'll be very interesting. I will say, for one, I can't wait for the season 2, just because the non-conference portion of the schedule is going to be so much better. That Texas game, we've reported that Big Noon's going to be there. So is Game Day, and ESPN's doing a special the night before, the Friday night before. So going to be fascinating how much attention there is around that game. But don't forget about Fresno State. Going to be playing for their coach, who just resigned probably. And there's some talent on that team too. So, but man, look at that schedule, buddy. USC, UC at Washington, Ohio State, Oregon. It's going to be a really fun year.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And the fact that I don't want to say this season is gravy, because you're coming off a national title, but short of like crapping the bed and the wheels completely falling off, it does kind of feel like whatever happens this year, like I think it's going to be fun regardless. So
yeah, just don't lose to Michigan State, which I think is a very long shot, right? Yeah, go 9-3, and if you make the playoff, great. If you're just outside the playoff, that would suck. But you know what? The expectation here now is to beat Ohio State every year too. So go out and beat the Buckeyes as well.
Compete, get in that 12-team playoff, and see what happens. Because I think the further we move into what college football is now, I don't think it's just 4 or 5 teams anymore that have a shot. I think that you're starting to see this talent from everywhere spread among like 20 to 25 teams. And there's maybe 7 or 8 teams who are really, really good and could win it all. So, hey, you know what would be fun too? We even talk about this. How about hosting a playoff game on December 20th? We go Christmas shopping at Briarwood, and then ship on over to the big house to play like Old Miss or something.
That'd be fantastic. I would love it. Yeah, I would look forward to seeing it. And you know what? Let's bring one of those Southern teams up here, right? And let them play in a little snow, and then they can use the old Ohio State excuse about snow flurries when they get beat. But you know what? It's going to be a different animal. It's going to be something we've never seen before, but I can't wait for it.
I cannot wait for it either. So Big Ten Media Days next week. Michigan is on Thursday, July 25th. We, of course, as we said earlier, will not be there day one, because we'll be doing the Champions Circle golf outing at the Michigan Golf Course on Tuesday. I'll be live streaming from there at 8 a.m. Eastern, running through 10 a.m. A little more details on what the rundown will look like a little closer to the event. Remember to use that promo code UM1 to get 2 months of access to the Wolverine for $1. And be sure to like this video if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. A lot of great video content coming on a number of fronts over the next several weeks. And when Saturday hits, you just have 6 more of them until the season begins. Have to wait a little bit longer because you start with a night game, but we're almost there, folks. For Chris Ballas, for our producer Megan behind the scenes, I'm Anthony Broom. Thanks for watching, and we will talk to you again next time.